167 days remain till the American people make an awfully important decision. It's May 22nd. This is the warning. A few minutes before midnight, on December 31st, 1999, from the Lincoln Memorial, President William Jefferson Clinton spoke the concluding words of the 20th century from an American president's mouth. They were optimistic. They were full of hope. Let's listen to the last two paragraphs of that speech.
Now, we're just moments from that new millennium. 2 centuries ago, as the framers were crafting our Constitution, Benjamin Franklin was often seen in Independence Hall, looking at a painting of the sun low on the horizon. When at long last the Constitution finally was signed, Mr. Franklin said, "I have often wondered whether that sun was rising or setting. Today I have the happiness to know it is a rising sun." Well, 2 centuries later, we know the sun will always rise on America as long as each new generation lights the fire of freedom. Our children are ready. So again, the torch is passed to a new century of young Americans.
This vision of President Clinton's did not come to pass. The world we live in, according to one of the preeminent scholars on totalitarianism and 20th century fascism, stands at an hour that on the clock, according to Dr. Timothy Snyder, is 1938. The Ukrainian army is exhausted. It is battered. Russians are advancing. There are stories in the United States press about Rudy Giuliani urinating during a court hearing, but not about the dire conditions at the Ukrainian front, where the losses are as a direct result of the perfidy and the incompetence and the stupidity of the United States Congress and the MAGA movement that made the world so much more dangerous. Yesterday, Neil Patel, the chief executive officer of Tucker Carlson Media, denied reports that he was in business along with Tucker Carlson with the Russian government. It doesn't matter whether it's a financial deal or not. They are in business morally, and they are in business intellectually. And that's why Russian state media put Tucker Carlson onto their television programming. How is it that we got from there to there? According to the Atlantic magazine, in an astonishing essay, the Saudi government was deeply involved in the 9/11 attacks. It turns out there was a state sponsor. It wasn't the Iraqi government, of course. We know that and have for a long time. But according to litigation records, it was the Saudi government. Think about that. How would history have been different if we knew and the Bush administration had acted on reality, which was that the state sponsorship came from inside a government that purported to be an American ally? What was the cost of all of this? At the end of the Atlantic article, they sum it up. Let me read it. Today, for most Americans, the global war on terror has become a hazy memory from the time before Donald Trump. In Washington, policymakers avoid discussing the subject. Yet it bears remembering. It cost us $6 trillion. And that number is expected to go higher because of the long-term healthcare cost for veterans. It turned the Middle East upside down, increasing the regional influence of Iran. More than 7,000 American servicemen and women died in action. 30,000 more, an extraordinary number, died by suicide. In all, More than 800,000 Iraqis, Afghans, and others, most of them civilians, perished in the war. The war on terror and its origins in 9/11 are seen in retrospect as farce and tragedy. But the emerging picture of the preparations for 9/11 make recognizing the sheer scale of the blunder inescapable. And that's from Daniel Benjamin, the president of the American Academy in Berlin, who served as the counterterrorism coordinator at the U.S. State Department from 2009 to 2012, and Stephen Simon, a senior fellow at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft and a professor of Middle Eastern Studies at the University of Washington, author of Grand Delusion, The Rise and Fall of American Ambition in the Middle East. Farce. What a perfect word. There was this from yesterday. World-class demagogue Ted Cruz assaulting the United States Secretary of State with utter nonsense.
Mr. Secretary, you have presided over the worst foreign policy disaster of modern times. When Joe Biden became president, he inherited peace and prosperity in the world. We now have two simultaneous wars waging, the worst war in Europe since World War II and the worst war in the Middle East in 50 years. Both, I believe, were caused by this administration's consistent weakness. And indeed, your foreign policy is precisely backwards from what a rational American foreign policy should be. To our friends and allies, this administration has consistently undermined, weakened, and attacked them. And to our enemies, this administration has shown constant appeasement and indeed has flowed billions of dollars to the enemies of America who want to kill us.
The great tragedy and travesty of the 21st century that helped get us from there to here was the war in Iraq, a farce. I'm going to show you a farce. The man who calls himself America's mayor, a man who is a disgrace beyond any measure. Let's look back at some of Rudolph Giuliani's greatest hits.
With a very big spike in the vote count at exactly that time. Right up. So what we're telling you is supported by evidence.
Shall we take a trip back in time to the Four Seasons?
Trump advisor Rudy Giuliani held his infamous news conference outside the business last November. The Trump team mistakenly booked Four Seasons Total Landscaping instead of the Four Seasons Hotel in Center City for the news conference.
This is outrageous. An enormously important contest with a very, very suspect method of voting. There was no security. Zero. The people of this city, people of this country have no assurance at all that those ballots were actually cast. They would have to have been almost unanimously cast for Joe Biden in order to catch up.
What Rudy Giuliani has become is a loser, a broke drunk, a man who sits at his 80th year in utter disgrace, a seditionist, a criminal defendant, one of the most corrupt public officials of the 21st century in American life, a man who represents perfectly the vices and the lowness that has pulled the nation to this low point. And this morning, I learned that I've been blocked by America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani. Who knew? Why? What did I say? Rudolph Giuliani is a Polaris of vice and all of the wretched qualities of selfishness and self-serving ambition that has harmed this country so grievously and brought us to this low moment where the front runner to be the next president of the United States, Donald Trump, talks openly about human beings as vermin, promises mass deportation camps and a police state to fill them. Rudy Giuliani's in the coffee business now.
My own brand of organic specialty coffee, Rudy Coffee. Believe me when I say it's the best coffee you'll ever try. It's smooth, rich, chocolatey, and gentle on your stomach. It's so good, I even recommend drinking it black. It comes in 3 varieties, including what I promise is the best decaf you'll ever have. You can order now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by visiting rudy.coffee. By supporting Rudy Coffee, you're not just treating yourself to exceptional coffee, you're also supporting our cause.
America's mayor indeed. I'm Steve Schmidt. This is The Warning, and I invite you to subscribe on our Substack, on our YouTube channel. Follow us. Welcome to the community.